There are places in Montserrat where the buildings, roads, and records did not vanish, but you still are not free to walk in. This is a countdown of 13 forbidden places in Montserrat, and by the end, the map will stop looking like a holiday island and start looking like a warning system. We begin away from the buried capital, in Flemings, at the Montserrat Volcano Observatory. From here, Soufriere Hills is watched through seismometers, GPS receivers, and gas sampling equipment. The room is clean, practical, full of screens and quiet machine noise. No drama is needed. A line moving across a monitor can matter more than smoke on the horizon. Number 13 is the observatory's working hazard network. These are not souvenir viewpoints. The equipment belongs to the system that decides when land is safe enough for access, when a road should stay closed, and when a boundary still holds. Metal boxes, cables, antennas, and sampling gear sit in a landscape shaped by ash and rain. It is the island listening to the volcano. Number 12 is the controlled edge around that science. Visitors can learn about the volcano from approved places, but the working ground is not open for wandering. The danger is not always loud. Sometimes it is a slope loaded with loose deposit. Sometimes it is rain turning old ash into a moving flow. Sometimes it is the simple fact that a place looks calm because the people in Flemings are still watching it. That is the rule for this whole countdown. A forbidden place here may be a village with furniture still inside. It may be a bay where a church, a school, and a beach were damaged again and again by lahars. It may be a museum in Plymouth where Amerindian pottery, colonial records, and natural history specimens were abandoned and largely lost. And far down the list is the place that explains why over 7,000 Montserratians left during the volcanic crisis, and why a law in 2002 gave full British citizenship to people whose home ground had changed under them. The observatory remains controlled, and the next line on the map leads toward the coast. Subscribe if you follow Forbidden Islands, because the first closed shore is where the volcano reaches the sea. From Flemings, the warning system points outward, down through gullies and roads, until it reaches the water. That is where number 11 begins, the closed sea edge below the volcano, where the island does not end cleanly at the shore. Along the southern and western coasts, boats can face rules that feel strange to anyone used to Caribbean postcards. The water may look open, the sun may hit it blue and flat, but the coast beside it has been shaped by volcanic material, unstable ground, and runoff that can move after heavy rain. A crew passing offshore is not the same as a crew stopping there. The line is legal, practical, and dangerous all at once. Listen to that difference. Passing through means the engine keeps running, the hull keeps moving, the shoreline stays at a distance. Stopping means trusting a coast that the volcano has already changed. The smell of salt is still there. So is the bright strip of sea. But behind it, the slopes carry ash and loose material that rain can wake up again. This water remains controlled. Number 10 is Old Road Bay on the west coast. Before the damage, it held a church, a school, and a beach. The kind of small coastal center where daily life would have made its own sound. Doors opening, children crossing a yard, waves folding over sand. Then lahars came through, again and again. It is volcanic debris mixed with water, heavy enough to batter walls, block roads, and leave a gray, hardening mess behind. Old Road Bay is still restricted. It is what can happen when rain falls on old volcanic material above the bay. A beach can look harmless after the sky clears, but the route into it may still answer to the mountain. So the countdown has moved from instruments to the sea to a damaged west coast settlement. And now the map turns inland, toward a village where the houses did not all disappear. Some still hold the things people left in the mid-1990s, waiting behind a daytime boundary. Old Road Bay. The road inland does not climb into wilderness. It climbs toward former neighborhoods, former driveways, former rooms. Number 9 is Cork Hill, a village in a restricted daytime access zone. where the danger is quieter than a blocked coast, but no less real. This is one of the strangest kinds of forbidden ground on the island, because it can still look like a place that might restart. A wall stands, a roof holds, a road bends past houses that once had ordinary mornings inside them. But access is controlled, and the clock matters. Daytime entry is different from living there, sleeping there, or treating the village as safe ground again. Inside abandoned homes, items from the mid-1990s evacuations are still reported to remain. Furniture, household pieces, the small plain things people do not pack when they think they may be gone for a short emergency. A chair near a table, a cupboard that once opened every day, the dry smell of old wood and closed rooms. Dust where hands used to land. Cork Hill feels so different from a collapsed building. The village was interrupted. The boundary came down across normal life, and normal life stayed there, growing stale behind doors. Number 8 is the wider, restricted residential belt around places like Delvins, Weeks, and Foxes Bay, grouped with the same uneasy logic. Some daytime access may be allowed, but the South has not returned to ordinary settlement. You can understand that rule better when you look downhill. The buried capital is close enough to be part of the view, and the volcano is close enough to be part of every decision. So the houses remain in a half state, too intact to feel gone, too controlled to feel open. The silence there has texture, dry leaves scraping concrete, a loose sheet of metal tapping in wind, the faint smell of damp plaster after rain. Cork Hill remains under daytime restriction, and the next place on this countdown is worse in a different way, because it was built to protect memory itself, and it could not protect its own collection. Past the houses around Cork Hill, the road of the countdown bends toward Plymouth, but it does not enter the capital yet. Number 7 is the old Montserrat Museum, one of the most painful sites, because it was built around memory, and memory was exactly what the eruption trapped. Before the city was abandoned, the museum held Amerindian pottery, colonial records, and natural history specimens. Think about the range of that collection for a moment. Clay shaped before the modern island existed as a political place. Paper records from the long colonial period. Specimens from the island's own forests, rocks, and living world. In one building, Montserrat kept pieces of its deep past, its written past, and its natural past. Then Plymouth was emptied, and the museum was left inside the danger area. A museum normally fights slow enemies: damp air, insects, dust, fading ink, cracked labels. Here the enemy was larger. Ash entered the city. Access became controlled. The collection was abandoned and largely lost. The image is hard to shake. Display cases in a closed building. Pottery that may have survived centuries, only to be caught in a modern evacuation. Paper that once carried names, land, decisions, disputes, daily records, left where rescue could not simply walk in and lift it out. It would smell of damp walls, old paper, and mineral dust. The forbidden zone is more than a hazard map. It also contains missing evidence. When a house is lost, a family loses rooms. When a museum is lost, an island loses part of the way it proves itself to the future. The old museum remains inside the controlled area of Plymouth, unreachable except under official conditions tied to the wider exclusion. And if that building held the island's memory, the next place held its movement, the waterfront, the port routes, and the working edge where Montserrat once connected itself to the outside world. The countdown moves toward the working edge of Plymouth, where the old city met the sea. Number 6 is the former waterfront and port area, a place that once made the capital more than a cluster of streets. It was the island's doorway. Before the evacuation, this edge handled arrival and departure, cargo and official movement, the ordinary traffic that keeps a small territory alive. You can picture the hard surfaces underfoot, the smell of salt, diesel, wet rope, and hot concrete. Papers would have moved through offices, goods would have come in, people would have watched the water for boats, weather, and news from outside. Now that waterfront sits inside the controlled area. The danger is layered. There is the volcanic material already laid down. There is the risk of unstable ground. There is the legal line around Plymouth itself. And there is the simple fact that a port cannot function when the land behind it is part of an exclusion system. The sea may still shine beside it, but this working edge remains sealed. Number 5 is the broken road logic around the old capital. A road on a map can look clean. A route can seem to connect one point to another. On Montserrat, the old southern approaches do not work that way anymore. Gates, signs, and official controls decide where movement stops. A dry roadbed may carry dust one week and lahar material after rain. A valley crossing may look passable from a distance, until you remember what came down from the slopes above it. This is where the forbidden places begin to connect. Old Road Bay was damaged by lahars. Cork Hill sits under daytime restriction. The museum was trapped in Plymouth. The port lost the city it served. The roads lost the right to behave like roads. The deeper cut. It changes where food moves, where emergency services can go, where families meet, where the government can operate, and where return is allowed to feel possible. The waterfront and the old routes remain controlled, and next, the countdown leaves buildings for a moment, because the most important forbidden place may be the home ground that over 7,000 people had to carry away in their names. Past the old routes around Plymouth, the countdown widens into something that does not fit neatly behind a gate. Number 4 is the abandoned home ground of the Montserratians, who left during the volcanic crisis because a forbidden place can also be a district people still name, still remember, and still cannot simply return to. Over 7,000 Montserratians left during that crisis. It was a movement out of neighborhoods, out of family land, out of the southern part of the island where the volcano had changed the rules. Suitcases replaced cupboards. Temporary rooms became long-term rooms. The smell of ash and damp concrete gave way to airport floors, ferry decks, borrowed beds, and new streets with unfamiliar sounds. The legal response came later. Under the 2002 Act, the United Kingdom granted full British citizenship. On paper, that gave displaced people a stronger status and a clearer right to build lives elsewhere. But citizenship does not carry a front step with it. It does not bring back a school lane, a church bell, a fruit tree beside a house, or the exact turn in a road where somebody used to wave from a porch. This entry belongs in the countdown. It is the locked shape of many private lives. Every controlled road, every closed bay, every abandoned room in Cork Hill, and every lost case in the old museum points back to the same pressure. The volcano did not only move material downhill, it moved people across borders, and the places they left behind remain under the island's rules. Some can be seen, some can be entered only under conditions. Some are too dangerous to treat as home at all. The evacuated districts remain controlled, and above them stands the source of every permit, every warning sign, and every interrupted return. Soufriere Hills itself. The countdown climbs back from the evacuated districts to the force that drew every line on the southern map. Number 3 is the inner ground around Soufriere Hills, the volcanic area where access is controlled because the island is still being read, measured, and judged in real time. This is the place that turns geography into permission. A road may exist, a slope may be visible, a valley may look still from a viewpoint, but none of that makes it open. Around the volcano, the ground can hold ash, loose material, unstable channels, and old flow paths that rain can reactivate. The surface may crunch under a boot like dry gravel, then become heavy and slick when water cuts through it. Flummings matters so much. The Montserrat Volcano Observatory watches Soufriere Hills with seismometers, GPS receivers, and gas sampling equipment. They are the reason a closed gate stays closed, the reason a guide waits for clearance, the reason an official map can change the way people move across their own island. Picture the mountain from a safe distance. Green on one side, gray where the deposits lie. Cloud catching along the top. It can look asleep, especially to someone who has never watched an exclusion zone work. But the island has learned to trust instruments over appearances. A calm slope is still a controlled slope when the volcano beneath it remains active enough to monitor. This is the central pressure behind these places. Old Road Bay answers to runoff from above. Cork Hill answers to daytime rules. Plymouth answers to emergency control. The museum, the port, the roads, the homes, the coast, all of them sit inside decisions that begin here. And the inner volcanic ground remains off-limits except under official control. But number 3 is still not the final reveal. The mountain explains the danger. The next place shows what that danger did to the shape of a city before the city itself appears. Downhill from Soufriere Hills, the countdown reaches the perimeter of Plymouth. At the inner ground of Soufriere Hills, the countdown drops toward Plymouth. But number 2 stops at the edge. This is the perimeter of the old capital. The approaches, warning signs, blocked routes, and controlled entry points where curiosity meets law. Here, the island changes tone. A hillside view may show the shape of streets below. A road may still point downhill. A wall may still stand where a business, office, or home once faced the street. But the closer you get to Plymouth, the less the map behaves like an invitation. It behaves like an instruction. Stop here. Wait here. Do not cross without permission. This separates Plymouth's edge from an ordinary abandoned district. Many empty places around the world decay in public. People wander in, take photographs, step over broken glass, and call it exploration. At this perimeter, entry is governed by emergency rules and official control. A visitor cannot treat the city as open ground because the volcano has left hazards that do not care how calm the day looks. The surface itself can mislead you. Ash can settle into a pale crust. Old road lines can appear under dust. Drainage channels can cut through deposits like scars. In dry weather, the air may carry a chalky smell and the ground may sound firm under a boot. After rain, the same approach can change character. Montserrat's closed places are often controlled because they are unstable in time, not only in space. From approved viewpoints, Plymouth can appear close enough to understand. Roofs, fragments of walls, street patterns, and the gray spread of volcanic material show where a capital once worked. That distance is part of the tension. You can see the target of the countdown before you are allowed to reach it. The perimeter remains controlled, and the city beyond it remains under authority. Number 2 is the last warning before number 1. Past this edge lies the place where the island's government center, old museum, port memory, and buried streets all meet, inside the forbidden capital itself. Past the perimeter, number 1 begins in Plymouth itself. This is the payoff the countdown has been moving toward. A capital city that still has streets, buildings, civic memory, and buried records, but sits inside a controlled danger area where ordinary entry is not allowed. Plymouth matters because it gathered so many functions into one place. The old museum was there, with Amerindian pottery, colonial records, and natural history specimens. Government work was there. Port memory was there. Roads fed into it. Families came through it for business, school, errands, and the small routines that make a city feel normal. Then the volcano changed the ground under every one of those routines. It is loaded with leftovers. A wall line here, a roof edge there, a street shape still readable from above. Ash and volcanic material soften the old corners, cover low places, and make the familiar layout feel half erased. It is grit underfoot, wind moving through broken openings, and the dry scrape of dust against concrete. And this is where these places stop feeling like separate entries. The observatory in Fleming's is watching the force that closed Plymouth. Old Road Bay shows what lahars can do to a settled coast. Cork Hill shows the homes left in a restricted daytime zone. The museum shows the cultural loss trapped inside the city. The displaced population shows what happens when a map becomes unlivable. Plymouth contains all of that at once. The capital is different from the other places on this list. It is dangerous ground. It is the old center of the island's public life, held behind official control because the volcano still has authority over the south. The air would taste mineral and stale. The sun would strike walls that no longer face crowns. A doorway might still suggest an office, a shop, a room with a purpose. Plymouth remains sealed under control. And in the final part, the question is no longer what is forbidden there. It is what those boundaries are really protecting. It is a whole chain of controls, running from the instruments and Flemings to the coast, from Old Road Bay to Cork Hill, from the museum cases to the roads that no longer behave like public roads. The final shape of the countdown, 13 places, each held by a different kind of restriction. Some are kept back by physical danger, some by emergency control, some by daytime limits, some by the simple fact that a slope above them can still send volcanic material downhill after rain. Together, they form a second map of Montserrat, drawn over the island people knew before the crisis. And at the center of that second map is Plymouth. The old capital remains the strongest image because it gathers the losses into one place. The museum that held Amerindian pottery, colonial records, and natural history specimens was abandoned and largely lost there. The port memory and the government center were there. The roads led there. The people who left carried its importance with them, even after more than 7,000 Montserratians had to build lives away from the danger area, and even after the 2002 Act gave full British citizenship through the United Kingdom. That legal change helped people move forward. It did not unlock the city. This is the lesson the island keeps repeating in concrete, ash, and warning signs. Return is not the same as access. You may see a roof, you may recognize a road, you may know exactly where a school, church, office, or family room used to stand. But Soufriere Hills still has to be measured, the gas still has to be sampled, the ground still has to be watched. The closed sites are protecting more than visitors from danger. They are protecting the truth of what happened there. A chair left in Cork Hill, a damaged bay on the west coast, a lost museum shelf in Plymouth. Each one says the same thing without speaking. At the observatory, the screens keep moving in their quiet room. Downhill, the old city waits behind its rules. If you want more journeys in the closed islands, lost towns, and places maps still warn you about, subscribe before the next route opens.